Unable to sleep due to restlessness, I welcomed the morning at 6 o'clock on the sofa. When I checked my smartphone, there was a message from Charles. It seems our grandchild has been safely born. Robert, wake up! Maria did her best. Let's go to the hospital. I shook my sleeping husband next to me and hurriedly started getting ready. Maria! Charles! When we arrived at the hospital, there was one more person besides the two of them, a tiny life. Do you have a name? Have you decided? Charles replied.
No. We didn't even know the gender, so we would decide after the birth. By the way, it's a girl.
I see. I hope she gets a good name. Our granddaughter slept in Maria's arms on the hospital bed. Looking at her, I remembered Maria's appearance from years ago. Maria said,
Mom, want to hold her?
Is it okay? Then let me hold her. Her sleeping face, weight, and scent were all identical. The adorable innocence naturally softened my expression. Look, it's Grandma and Grandpa. Just as I was about to entrust the little life to Robert, something happened. He was drenched in sweat, trembling violently. Wait, what's wrong? Robert stammered.
Don't let that baby near me!
What was going on? I looked at Maria and Charles, but both of them had wide-open eyes. It was clear that I hadn't misheard. Maria asked, Dad, what are you saying? Charles wondered.
Is something wrong?
Robert said,
No, it's different. I feel a burning heat. I don't want to remember, but it's like the terrifying heat from that fire.
My husband, Robert, is blind. 3 years ago, there was a massive fire at the scientific chemical plant where he worked, and unfortunately, he suffered burns to both eyes. Fortunately, his life was not in danger, but since then, Robert has lost his sight. Despite the fire, he remains bright and kind-hearted. The journey to this point involved immense struggle, inner conflict, and effort. While I can imagine it, understanding it is beyond words. Robert, is there anything I can help with? Robert replies,
I'm fine for now.
If anything comes up, don't hesitate to call. Robert chuckles.
I've gotten used to it. You can relax.
Although he always says that, true peace of mind eludes us, and we continue to worry about him both physically and emotionally. Despite his unfortunate circumstances, resilient Robert possesses a unique skill. Through conversation, he can glimpse the true intentions of others. He insists it's merely a heightened sense, not any kind of superpower, but from an outsider's perspective, it's an impressive ability. The notion that blindness sharpens hearing sensitivity is well known, supported by scientific theories. However, in Robert's case, his innate sensitivity to others' emotions seems to have intensified after losing his sight. As a result, both I and our daughter Maria, who lives with us, seek his judgment whenever something arises, a habit we can't break. Robert truly is a dependable presence. Recently, when Maria brought her partner home, Robert's sixth sense provided solid confirmation. A few years ago.
Let me introduce you. This is Charles.
Nice to meet you. I'm Charles. I've always been taken care of by Maria.
Charles, this young man, was polite and neatly dressed, a typical good-natured guy. Whether he was naturally fearless or simply adept at concealing it, He actively engaged in conversation. At that moment, Maria seemed more nervous than he did. Understandably so. Her father has the power to read other people's minds. If anything seemed off, it would undoubtedly be brought up later. Apparently Charles had heard about Robert's blindness. He naturally didn't know about Robert's unique ability. Yet, there was nothing overly suspicious or unusual about Charles. On the contrary, he spoke with consideration for Robert, subtly showing his good impression. As it turned out, they were originally colleagues at work, and their interactions extended beyond professional boundaries. Robert listened intently to their stories. Later, as the sunset and darkness enveloped the surroundings, Charles bid his farewell. Robert shared his impressions of the young man.
I can't see his face, but he seems like a good person.
Upon hearing those words, Maria and I let out a sigh of relief, of course. I attempted to describe Charles's appearance to Robert, using a celebrity lookalike as an example.
Wait, you think he looks like that with his personality? He's too perfect. He might attract trouble.
Robert chuckled wryly. From then on, Charles often visited our home with Maria. He was impeccable in every way, always considerate of Robert's well-being. I felt immense relief, knowing that Charles could safely marry Maria. And then, a simple curiosity arose. May I ask something?
Certainly. What is it?
Since you are such a good person, I'd like to know about your parents. If it's okay, could you share? After a brief silence, Charles offered a rueful smile and began to speak.
I apologize. I lost my parents at an early age.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry for asking. His demeanor remained unchanged.
No, it's fine. But, well, there are things I've been thinking about. Since I couldn't properly fulfill my filial duties, if there's an opportunity, I'd like to do it on behalf of them. I believe it would bring them joy, and it would ease my own burden.
His confession felt like an unspoken plea, a flood of emotions impossible to gauge.
So, in a way, I see yourselves in my parents. This time, I want to live without regrets.
As I finished listening to his words, I noticed Robert standing there, silently nodding. He had been listening to Charles's voice all along. Time passed, and the two of them were happily united. The wedding went smoothly, and afterward, Charles moved into our home. Even after marriage, he continued to care for us, especially my husband's well-being. However, there was one concern. Our house had a south-facing garden elevated by one level from the road. Occasionally, trash would be scattered there. Last week it happened 3 times, and this week twice. We considered whether crows or other birds might be responsible, but the frequency seemed too coincidental. Still, even if someone intentionally did it, the harm wasn't significant enough to make a fuss, so I kept it to myself. The season transitioned from early summer. Maria and Charles shared the joyful news of her pregnancy. Truly a cause for celebration. On the other hand, while accommodating Charles alone was manageable, the prospect of another addition made us consider moving. Given my husband's visual impairment, a barrier-free property seemed like a good idea. One night, as we discussed these matters, a rustling sound interrupted us.
Who's there?
Robert asked. It wasn't a gentle sound like the wind, it was rough, as if something had passed by. An uneasy feeling settled in. I couldn't rely on my husband at times like this. I mustered courage, grabbed the curtain, and pulled it open.
Oh my!
Hey, what's wrong?
Robert inquired, and in the darkness, we saw a crow's lifeless body amid the lush greenery. That moment, I became certain, the litter in our garden wasn't from birds, but from a person with clear ill intent. After contacting the local government to handle the remains, I explained the situation and our suspicions to the three of them.
Why didn't you say anything earlier?
Robert asked. Until now, it truly seemed like wind-blown trash. The garbage bins aren't far, and I assumed it was bird-related. I replied. Maria suggested calmly, considering our options. Charles agreed, adding that raising the fence might help, but wouldn't address the root issue. Robert proposed installing security cameras, and after much discussion, we decided to do just that. About a week after installing the cameras, Maria, now pregnant, discovered trash in the garden once again. Checking the footage, we were surprised to find the culprit identified so easily. The security camera showed a woman with long blonde hair, casually tossing a garbage bag with her right hand. Not only her appearance, but her face was clearly captured. Maria whispered,
I feel like I've seen this person before.
Despite thinking hard, she couldn't recall, so we waited for Charles to return. That night, when Charles came home, we promptly showed him the footage. His revelation left us astounded.
This person. It's Ms. Brown, my junior.
Apparently, she had been pursuing him persistently. Initially, he gently declined, but as things escalated, he revealed Maria's existence and firmly rejected her advances. Given this context, her recent actions weren't hard to imagine.
That's why I recognized her.
But will the police take action? You know how stalkers can be stubborn. I wondered. Robert reassured us.
We have solid evidence. It should be fine. Let's start by explaining.
The police took the situation seriously, contrary to my expectations. Thanks to their intervention, the woman named Brown received a stern warning from the police. She was also required to sign an agreement at her workplace, promising not to approach Maria and Charles. Ultimately, she was transferred to another state. It appears that her motive for such actions was indeed harassment. However, there was one unexpected twist. Her ill intent was directed not at Charles but at Maria, the woman who took Charles away from her. It was a case of misdirected anger, to say the least. Nevertheless, our home returned to peace once again. Time flew by. Maria's belly grew larger, and she was admitted to the hospital for childbirth. As I prepared for her hospitalization, gathered postpartum necessities, and ran around attending to various tasks, memories from the past resurfaced. When I gave birth to Maria, it was a difficult labor, and I went through quite an ordeal. Although it happened over 20 years ago, every detail remained vivid in my memory. Now, being in the position of an observer, I felt deep emotions. Maria went into labor one night. Consequently, Robert and I stayed home while Charles accompanied her.
I'm looking forward to it,
Robert said. His words seemed to blend genuine anticipation with a touch of sadness. Understandably so, he wouldn't be able to see his first grandchild's face. As I pondered how to respond, Robert seemed to read my thoughts and quietly continued.
Throughout my life, I've never deeply regretted losing my sight, but this time, it stings a little. I wish I could have seen my grandchild's face.
In your place. I'll see it plenty. Didn't I promise to be your eyes? Robert?
Even if I say that, it won't change anything, and you are having trouble answering.
Clearly, he saw through even the smallest details.
With this strange ability, I still can't see my grandchild's face. Hey, would you join me for a drink?
Certainly. Of course. My abilities are limited, but if sharing a drink can ease his burden, I'll extend my hand. Restless and unable to sleep, I welcomed the morning at 6 o'clock on the sofa. When I checked my smartphone, there was a message from Charles. It seemed our grandchild had been born safely. Robert, wake up! Maria did her best. Let's go to the hospital. I shook my sleeping husband next to me and hurriedly started getting ready. It was a weekday morning, and the hospital seemed quieter than usual. The sparse foot traffic included patients in pajamas heading toward the shop. Amidst this scene, I noticed a shadow that emitted an indescribable sense of suspicion. The figure didn't appear overly suspicious, yet its inability to blend in with the surroundings felt peculiar. Robert seemed to sense something too.
Something feels different. Is someone there?
When I mentioned the shadow, Robert muttered,
Don't approach recklessly.
And tapped the floor with his white cane. I took his hand, casting a sidelong glance at the mysterious person. Maria! Charles! When we arrived in the hospital room, there were two others, a tiny life.
Good morning, both of you. How are you feeling?
Good morning. Nothing's wrong. The baby is doing well.
I see. That was good.
After that, Robert frowned. So I helped him sit down. I asked if he was feeling unwell, but apparently, he wasn't. For now, we decided to share our joy. Have you decided on a name? Charles replied.
Not yet. We didn't even know the gender, so we would decide after the birth. By the way, it's a girl.
I see. I hope she gets a good name. Our granddaughter slept in Maria's arms on the bed. Seeing her, I remembered Maria as a baby. Maria said,
Mom, want to hold her?
Is it okay? Then let me hold her. Her sleeping face, weight, and scent were all identical. The innocent, adorable sight softened my expression. Look, it's Grandma and Grandpa. As we were about to entrust the little one to Robert, something unexpected happened. He was drenched in sweat, trembling violently. Wait, what's wrong? Robert stammered.
Don't let that baby near me!
I looked at Maria and Charles. They were equally shocked. It was clear that this wasn't a misunderstanding.
Wait, what are you saying?
Charles wondered.
Is something wrong?
No, it's different. I feel a burning heat. I don't want to remember, but it's like the terrifying heat from that fire.
Could it be that he sensed something from this baby? I left our granddaughter with Maria and stood by Robert. His trembling subsided, but he still breathed heavily, shoulders rising and falling. Are you okay? Robert nodded.
I've calmed down a bit. Can we talk?
Yes, of course. I followed Robert out of the room to a nearby resting area. Robert apologized for startling me.
That baby is fine.
He assured. Then he began to explain.
I probably picked up on someone's emotions nearby. It was more intense than anything I've felt before. Burning resentment, anger. It was so vivid that I lost my composure. Sorry, the timing was bad.
No need to apologize. It's beyond your control. The feelings of resentment and anger. I had a hunch. Ms. Brown, a woman who received a stern warning from the police and was transferred due to her ill intent. Could she be approaching again? I knew the probability was incredibly low, but I couldn't shake it off. Maybe. I started to say, but Robert interrupted.
Yeah, it's not impossible. Besides, you mentioned a suspicious person in the lobby earlier. She might still be nearby. Can you search?
Understood. I enlisted Charles for the search. Walking around with my husband and Maria wasn't practical. But I didn't want to search alone. So, I asked Charles to accompany me, because he knew Ms. Brown's face well. However, despite thoroughly searching most of the areas accessible to the public, we failed to locate her. We returned to the hospital room, hoping it was just an unfounded concern. Charles reassured us that the hospital was safer, with more people around, and he would stay with Maria.
You both should go home and rest,
he said. That makes sense. Well then, take care of Maria, I replied.
Understood. Oh, and if anything happens, please call,
Charles added. Robert and I suppressed our anxiety and headed home. Although I didn't tell Robert, I wished I could have seen our granddaughter's face more clearly. I wondered whether she'd resemble Maria or Charles. What name would they choose for her? Tonight, once again, I'd likely have a restless night. Several hours later, in the evening, Robert uttered unsettling words once more.
It's happening again. I feel it, a burning heat. What is this?
Apparently, it wasn't a typical hospital-related illness. So, perhaps his mysterious ability was picking up even stronger emotions. The issue lay in those stronger emotions. Currently, there was only one possibility, and it was dangerously concerning. I pondered my next steps carefully. While part of me wanted to call the police immediately, I lacked concrete evidence. Personally verifying this situation could be futile or even life-threatening. Suddenly, I remembered the security cameras. Right. Checking those might provide some evidence. Excitedly, I reviewed the footage, but unfortunately, nothing appeared. Just as I felt stuck, a single ray of light seemed to descend from above. My smartphone vibrated, a message from Charles.
Are you okay?
Reluctantly, I decided to seek his help. I explained everything truthfully, and he replied succinctly.
Understood. I'm on my way.
I felt powerless. It was frustrating to be unable to act during such critical moments, even though I knew I wasn't at fault. After about 30 minutes, Charles returned. According to Robert, the sensation of heat was gradually intensifying. If we took his words at face value, it meant that a malevolent force was closing in. We promptly began searching the area around the house with Charles, and I grabbed a mop for self-defense. The sun had fully set, and while not pitch black, it was quite dim, a perfect backdrop for fear. Suddenly, a noise, both Charles and I heard it. It came from the back of the house, unmistakably accompanied by a human presence.
I'll check the back. Please contact the police just in case,
Charles said. I followed his advice, returned inside, and reported to the police.
Suspect apprehended. Repeat, Suspect apprehended.
The police confirmed. Unbelievable. Someone had indeed been lurking. The glimpse of her profile left no doubt. It was undoubtedly Ms. Brown, a woman. She was quietly escorted by multiple officers and placed into a police car. According to the police, she had been carrying a firelighter and a lighter. The implications were clear, the worst-case scenario. As soon as I realized we were safe, my legs gave way, and I couldn't stand.
Are you okay?
Charles asked. Yes, I'm fine. My legs just went weak once I felt safe. Charles's courageous actions were commendable, but without Robert's mysterious ability, what might have happened? Speaking of Robert, he had completely calmed down and returned to his usual cheerful self.
I have mixed feelings. Anyway, I'm relieved nothing happened. Am I really more extraordinary than I thought?
Charles replied.
Not just more than you thought. You're practically in the realm of superpowers.
Oh. If only I were a bit younger, maybe I could have been of more help to people.
Later, we learned that on that day, Ms. Brown had indeed infiltrated the hospital where Maria was admitted, intending harm. To make matters worse, her target wasn't Charles or Maria, it was their newborn granddaughter. Apparently, she harbored a selfish grudge after being transferred due to rumors of stalking at her previous workplace. However, on the day of the incident, the hospital's crowded environment forced her to abandon her plan. Instead, she decided to set the house on fire out of frustration. The heat Robert felt was undoubtedly the manifestation of this malevolent intent. After being taken into custody by the police, she awaited appropriate punishment in detention. Just when we thought true peace had returned, something unexpected happened. Ms. Brown's parents arrived, introducing themselves.
We deeply apologize for the inconvenience our daughter caused.
Her father said.
Once she's released, we'll take her back home and keep a close watch.
Her mother added. While it seemed they weren't seeking forgiveness, Robert wasn't present. He had gone with Charles that morning to pick up Maria from the hospital. Their sincerity was evident, but ultimately, we couldn't discern their true intentions. Naturally, I didn't invite them inside and politely saw them off at the doorstep. Later, a chilling question arose: why did they know our home's location? Realizing this, I decided to expedite the relocation plans I had been considering. With Maria safely discharged and our family expanded, I candidly explained the situation. We need to move soon, I told Robert. He took the initiative, joining Charles and me to explore various locations, reading the energies around us. Fortunately, we found a suitable home that satisfied everyone. It dawned on me, I hadn't fully believed in Robert's abilities until now. This incident made me wonder if he possessed true superpowers. The new house is a comfortable barrier-free property. Robert, and even our new family member, Karen, will find it accommodating. With this change, I hope Maria, Charles, and I can live here with peace of mind. The threat that once loomed over us has dissipated. I'm genuinely looking forward to starting a new life in this fresh environment. But... Hey, Charles. Can I ask you something?
Yes? What is it? Do you need any help?
No, not that. I just want to know, do you think it was a good decision for you to live with us? You should be a newlywed, filled with happiness, and now even with a daughter.
Well, I've mentioned this before. I wanted to be a good son. I've always longed for a family, so this is... well... it's good.
As I struggled to find words, he continued.
And also, I'm truly grateful to both of you.
Grateful?
Yes. If Robert hadn't been here, who knows what might have happened? And you believed in that, which is why everything ended without any incidents. If one of you were missing, I can't imagine the outcome. So, filial piety and repaying kindness, having this opportunity,
Thank you. This time, I could see it even without Robert's abilities. Charles isn't lying.
How was this story for you? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.